Everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Ryan Burkett, and I'll be hosting tonight's conversation. We're going to continue our career series, this time focusing on small businesses and startups in the hunting and fishing industry. Before we get started, just want to give a quick overview of the Armed Forces Initiative within backcountry hunters and anglers. I know some of you attending have a little bit more experience than others. So overall, BHA is dedicated to advocating for our public lands and waters, and aligned with that, our goal in the Armed Forces Initiative is to build conservationists and public land advocates from within our hunting and fishing military community. We try and do this in a couple ways. One, by building a network of clubs located on military installations in order to provide not just new hunters with a learning opportunity, but also enable, and also to ensure that those that grew up hunting and fishing are able to navigate the regulations and different requirements of a new duty assignment in the different states' regulations. There's a lot of challenges, obviously, for a population that moves every couple of years, and we're trying to create a system and network to plug into every time you move. We're also building, and some of you I know recognize the names, are a part of that. We're building an AFI liaison program in every state. The goal of that is so that state's installations, that state's guard or reservist population, and that state's veteran population have a single point of contact that knows what's going on in the state, understands that state chapter's priorities and events, and understands what's going on with the military community. Kind of our goal is that every time you are participating in an AFI event, whether it's a trail cleanup, a hunting camp, a fishing camp, a pint night, habitat improvement project, you should expect to learn some hunting or fishing skills or knowledge, also gain some knowledge, provide a little insight into conservation or public lands advocacies. This career series is an attempt to provide a little insight for the military community into employment opportunities within the hunting and fishing industry. The goal is that the more people we have in the industry, the more that we have protecting public lands and the hunting and fishing heritage. So just like in previous sessions in the career series, we're going to give you a little bit of an idea about what it takes to break into a hook and bullet company, this time focused on a startup or small business, and what it takes to succeed once you're there. Maybe highlighting even some of the challenges associated with kind of getting into that organization. If you want to, we've got a chat function here on Zoom. If you want to post questions into the chat, Kyle will make sure you get those answered before we break. We'll also give everyone an opportunity at the end to kind of come off mute and ask any additional questions, live. But to get started, I want to introduce you to tonight's guests, Rick and Jake, both veterans, both currently work for FHF, which stands for Fish Hunt Fight. FHF makes some amazing products and has an interesting story, which I'll let Rick kind of describe here in a second. FHF is also an amazing supporter of the Armed Forces Initiative. So I not only appreciate and want to thank Rick and Jake for their participation tonight, but also want to thank FHF in general for their continued military, law enforcement, and first responder hunting and fishing community. So to go ahead and get started, Rick, would you kind of just open up and give us some background, a little bit about FHF, how it started, what kind of gear you guys make?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And thanks everyone for hopping on this call and listening to what Jake and I have to say. But FHF here, as Ryan said, it stands for Fish Hunt Fight Gear. It was started back in 2009 by Paul Lewis. He is still our designer, but he's the founder of the company. He was not a vet, but he did 20 years in law enforcement, and I think 12, actually it might even be more than that, years were as the SWAT captain here in Gallatin County Sheriff's Department in Bozeman. So he was really in that tactical side of law enforcement. He started sewing his own gear, just had the needs to make some custom stuff. So he just, American sweat equity, and just bought a sewing machine and started making his own stuff. He also is a big hunter and angler, and he started sewing up his own hunting and fishing gear. And, so the beginning of the brand really was roots and tactical product. And that's why all of our stuff still today is, Cordura, tactical nylon. It's all soft goods, very similar to all the gear everyone's used to from being issued in the military. But most of our core products are hunting and fishing based, especially just being in Montana. Yeah, we have a big customer base, and we've grown over the past, over a decade. Our two big products, everything's kind of based on our foundational pieces. Our bino harness kind of really carried the company for years, and majority of those years from 2009, Paul was running this business while also being an active sheriff's deputy. So he kind of purposely kept it small until he retired in 2018. And it was just him and his wife running it for years. But the bino harness really kind of carried the business, put it on the map. And now we have a chest rig as well and a lot of other modularity with those two funds, so you can build them out. And I can go more in depth with any of that if anyone's interested. But that's, yeah, right around 2018, fall 2018 is when I was hired and came along for the journey. So I was like their first employee. So.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So if you would, could you kind of go into a little bit more detail about what your journey is to FHF, how they discovered you, you discovered them, and kind of how you got started there?
Yeah. So I moved to Montana from the East Coast in 2015, and then I worked for the Forest Service for years. And a friend and I moved out here, and we both did a kind of photography on the side, and that's how we ended up. We knew the company, we ran their bino harnesses, and randomly through Instagram, I can't really exactly remember when we started talking back and forth, but Paul and Jen were looking for someone to do photo work for them. So my buddy Seth and I started, we were side hustling cash for hunting funds. So we started doing photo work for them, built that relationship. I had always been obsessed with hunting and fishing gear. And any kind of tactical gear. I always had an interest. I would hand sew my own stuff. Everything I bought, I would modify it. And with that, talking to Paul through the photography work, just started giving him ideas on products and talking back and forth. And we just built a good friendship relationship. And then finally, he retired in 2018 and was really looking to grow the business and knew they needed to hire an employee. So he kind of extended an offer to me. I figured it'd be a good fit because I can help with keep continuing photo work for him, but then also I wanted to learn how to sew more, how to, I knew a lot of ins and outs of gear that the nuances of it that not a lot of people off the street just kind of know just from being personally interested in it. So so I got hired and just by networking, which is something I'll talk about later. I think it's important, but just doing that. But that's what brought me here.
No, thanks, Rick. And Jake, similar question. What about you? How'd you get started at FHF and kind of what was your journey?
Yeah, Ryan, and I just want to piggyback off Rick and thank you for throwing this together. Sitting here drinking an old fashioned for all you guys here. I had a pretty seamless transition into FHF gear. I actually, after the military, I went to college for a little bit and realized I didn't really want to do that full time like I thought I did. So I went overseas as a defense contractor for 11 years. And then the last like 4 years that I was working overseas, I really started getting serious about applying in the outdoor industry. So persistence was key. I just kept applying to any and all positions within the outdoor industry. I actually applied for a job a little over a year ago with Meat Eater, and I didn't get the job, but Casey Mitchell, the guy who was interviewing me, gave me an opportunity to shoot a bear defense video with Clay Newcomb to give him some handgun instruction. And that led to me coming into FHF gear to collect on a free bino harness. And I ended up meeting Paul and Rick and Phil. And 3 hours later, we were just kind of chatting up like we were old buddies. And a week later, I saw a job posting on FHF Gear's website. So I hit Rick up and he was like, "Oh man, are you interested in the job?" And I was like, "Heck yeah." I've kind of been looking for an opportunity like this for a long time. So Rick was pretty instrumental in helping me get this job. But again, persistence was key. I got told no a lot before I got here. So, I mean, that was kind of my, the seamless journey to FHF, definitely wasn't a straight path, but I'm here now and I freaking love working with these guys. So.
Yeah, Jake, thanks. So you said you got told no a bunch of times and that you applied to a lot of different places. Reflecting back on your transition from the military to contract work and then trying to get into, the hook and bullet industry, what were some of the challenges, you at least personally faced, either that you identified or kind of through the interview process, were identified, for you?
Yeah, Ryan. So, I mean, at first I just started applying for positions as they came up. I didn't necessarily have probably the best plan at first. I just knew I wanted to be in the outdoor industry, but that all began with applying for those positions as they showed up. And then, before I interviewed, I made sure that I knew as much as I possibly could about the company that I was interviewing with. And then in terms of me being told no, it was just maybe not a follow-up interview, or it was kind of like, hey, thanks for playing. And in between those times, I was just continuing to go back overseas to stay employed. But just staying persistent, applying for positions as they came up, and making sure I knew everything about that company seemed like the way to go to be where I'm at now with FHF Gear. So, and if I was going to build on that, I would tell these guys, make contacts, form relationships, go to trade shows, call people within the company you're hoping to get a job with. Let them know you're passionate. Like, opportunities are not going to come to you. You have to be proactive. You really got to get out there and make it happen. So.
Yeah. So as you went through kind of that journey, did you feel like there were certain skills or knowledge or experience maybe you lacked? I know you touched on networking, which is definitely part of it, but other than not having or trying to build that network, where there's, knowledge, skills, or kind of experience that you thought, you didn't have and maybe someone else could build to help them, get a leg up in that first role?
Yeah, every time I interviewed and didn't get the job, I kind of built this list of ideas that the interviewer had given me. Like, I'd reach out to him and be like, could you give me pointers on what I could do better? Like, clearly they're going to be impressed by your military background. They probably won't ask you many questions about that. That the fact that you served and you're a veteran is going to tell them a lot. But definitely following up on those interviews that weren't successful, and building kind of a list of ideas of ways to get better at the interview process, because you really do have to get a lot of experience interviewing on top of having a lot of previous work experience in the military.
No, thanks, Jake. I appreciate that. Rick, kind of similar question to you, but from the other side of it, right? Like, you've now kind of in a hiring role at FHF, or at least at a minimum, kind of in the interviewer role. Now that you've been there a while, what knowledge, skills, and experiences do you think are valuable to succeed, especially coming out of the military community? So whether it's gaps or things that people, attributes they have, or, just in general, if you could kind of touch on similar question.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to look at it from like what we really find valuable. And that's one of the big things, especially from like a smaller company, in this industry, is the dedication and not just punching a clock. And I think a lot of vets at least bring that, if a task needs done, you might be here for 14, 15 hours today, versus there's a lot of other folks with mentality of like, I put my 8 hours in, I'm clocking out, I don't care, and that is something that will, you won't stick around long if that's your mentality, especially in a small business. The dedication of, I'm here till this task is performed, it's done, and I'm part of this team, and the teamwork is, I think, the most valuable thing. And when we're looking for new employees, we're still a small team. We are a meat eater company, but so we have that network to dive into or tap into for different resources. But we are 5 people strong, and everyone is doing multiple, or wearing multiple hats. Like, a lot of stuff's going on, and that dedication to, if Jake needs help and my schedule clears up, I will jump in, help him, vice versa. And having that kind of teamwork, dedicated attitude is something huge, I think, the veteran community brings into roles in small business. And professionalism, I think, is another big one. It might not seem like it, but generally everyone leaving the military has that great professionalism, saying sir, ma'am, being confident and caring. Because Jake can probably speak to this more, but I did customer service for years as well, and still go to all our shows and talk to our customers face to face. And they definitely, someone from a military background can carry that confidence and talk to people very polite and professional and get them answers. And it really resonates with people. So I think those are the 2 big ones, because everyone's background is so diverse of what they did, in service. But those are just 2 key ones that come to mind. So.
No, that's Great point, Rick. And that kind of makes me think of something else. And another question is, so obviously in a small business, right, when you're 5 people, you don't have a dedicated IT person, a dedicated HR person, a dedicated whatever person, right? So like you said, everyone kind of has to wear a lot of hats. So to me, that kind of lends me to believe like someone coming out of the military, just willing to kind of get stuff done and being a generalist is a great skill set. From a hiring or interviewer perspective, how could a person on the other end of it translate that to you, right? Because I mean, sometimes being a generalist is kind of hard to describe. Like, no, I can do anything and just get it done. Like, how does that person stand above?
Yeah, no,
more hard
that's
skill
a
set.
really good question, because they are two things that come across. They're not. It's hard to quantify that on a piece of paper or on a resume. And that's where, like, during the interview process, kind of talking and picking people apart. I mean, we'll just take Jake for an example. Jake came in the shop. He was super professional, and that was kind of like a cheating kind of thing. I guess I got to meet him in person before, but I could tell just by that, like, confidence and professionalism and how he spoke. He spoke very, intelligently, everything. So it's hard to put that on a piece of paper, but I'd say definitely weigh on resumes, leadership skills. Like, just try to lay out whatever your role was, your MOS, however you were, as far as your service. Try to convey that in that leadership and teamwork is huge. However you can kind of push that across, because that is one thing. We can even go into, kind of, not to derail this, Ryan, but like networking, the outdoor industry is really small. It's tiny. I mean, no matter what it looks like from the outside in, when you get in this industry and you start going to shows, this person worked for this company, and it's, once you're in it, it's crazy to see how small it is, and networking's huge. But with that, the teamwork, that team depends on you so much. You have to be someone that's likable. They depend on you, or the company is going to fail, just like anything. But it's, so I'd really try to encourage people to find a way on their resume to really push teamwork and how they enjoy it and they thrive on it. Because that's one thing, not that just that they're good at it, but they enjoy that kind of teamwork role. Is that like an okay? I know it's kind of that they are hard things to put on a resume, but that's like two things I think the veteran community really brings to it. So
no, I think that's really valuable, because I think, especially when we start thinking about, people looking for jobs in the outdoor industry and comparing, am I interested in a small business, maybe a startup with 5 or 6 people versus, one of the bigger brands with dozens of people. Those bigger brands might be looking for just an HR person, or just a supply chain management person, or just a sourcing person. Whereas, what you said, and I think is valuable for everyone to understand, because as they evaluate opportunities, a smaller company or business needs, a utility fielder that can kind of do a lot and is willing to do a lot.
I think another thing, and then once again, this is a hard one to, convey on a piece of paper, but you brought it up, Ryan, just confidence to get a task done. Because we've definitely interviewed people who are like, so-and-so would be amazing at these tasks, but that's only 25 or 50% of what we're going to need to do. But they might have a characteristic or something where we don't know if they can really, they're going to put time and educate time to learn a skill for this. So I think that's one thing a lot of the veteran community has, is confidence to, like, okay, I don't know anything about this, like HR, don't know, but I will learn, and I will solve this problem for you. That is a huge thing, that confidence, versus, if someone came and more just wanted to stay in their lane, they didn't want to break out in anything. I think that really would hurt. It hurts them in our mind, because we just don't have the time for that. So, but that's a hard one too to put on a resume. But if someone can convey that in an interview, face to face, that's a huge thing. So,
no, thank Rick. That's awesome. So Jake, with that, as you kind of started at FHF, and you kind of, so to speak, first job in the outdoor industry, you're now at, essentially you were employee number 4 at the time or whatever, like, and had to wear a million different hats. What were some of the initial challenges you found kind of taking from the first few months in that role and having to do multiple different things and kind of wear all those different hats, kind of, and I'll ask you the second part of that, what did you feel you can pick up? But, start with, what were some challenges you found kind of breaking into the industry, specifically in a small company?
Yeah, Ryan, I think some of the initial challenges that I had were challenges that you would have in any new job. It involves starting at the bottom. With a job and a product that I knew very little about, I was familiar with FHF gear, but in terms of the intricacies of the gear itself, I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn about customer service and the way that you deal with customers. I've always felt like I had good people skills and I was able to articulate myself, but that can be really challenging when you're trying to answer questions about a product that you're still learning, right? So and I guess I'll preface that by saying it's hard to leave something that I was proficient at over the last 15 years and start fresh. But you've kind of got to have that mental fortitude and the ability to be unsure of yourself and fight through that for however long it takes to learn a new job. And I knew that coming in, and I know it would be the same with any job. So, going from what coming into a completely foreign environment and kind of rising above that, and really learning the job to the best of your ability. And I've only been here for a year. I'm still learning things every day, so it's not like, oh, I've arrived and now I'm done. It's like, no, I need to continue to improve on where I'm at now. And that starts from day one and continues forward. So, but I hope that answers your question as far as the initial challenges is just learning a new job. So
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate that. What were some of the things that maybe were foreign to you, but you picked up pretty easily just because of your, military and contracting background? That business things that you might have been like different, like I said, or foreign to you, but you actually surprisingly found yourself picking up quickly.
yeah, so I'd say the thing is, Ryan, especially as veterans, we don't have any trouble understanding that work ethic is key to being successful. I think the military gives us like a great idea of what work ethic does and instills that in us at a pretty early age. So I realized I didn't really have a huge issue understanding that I needed to show up. I needed to work hard. Sometimes I needed to take tasks that somebody else didn't want to do. I needed to be reliable, essentially be a leader. I feel I understood that stuff coming in, and I've continued to practice it every day. But in terms of kind of the idea of, oh, hey, here's a pro ambino harness and we've got a new walk-in customer right now, you need to explain this to them because you're the only one that can right now. Everybody else is busy. And it's not necessarily fake it till you make it, because Paul put in a lot of work here, and I didn't want to disgrace that. So every single moment I had of off time in between customers, I would make sure that I was going out of my way to ask Rick and ask Paul, how does this work, so that the next customer that comes in can get the best experience and then go tell everybody else that FHF gear is the best. So I think having served in the military and having been a contractor for as long as I did, working around other military types, I understood that was really important to just continue to improve.
No, thanks, Jake. So for Rick, for you, and you've touched on this a little bit already. So, and I know you've hired another person or two since Jake, but whether it's Jake or one of those other hires, what about their background kind of stood out to you and made you think like, yeah, this is the guy or gal that's the next, FHF employee?
Yeah, well, I mean, and this is unique to FHF here, just with Paul Lewis being 20 years law enforcement, and then his wife, Jen, actually worked. She was not a law enforcement officer, but she worked years in law enforcement for different agencies on like the psychiatric end and investigation. So she's very tied in, and her ex-husband is National Guard. So they were very tied into law enforcement, military. I'm prior military. So obviously, as the company kept going, the law enforcement and military kind of backgrounds are in supporting that is really key to this brand. So as soon as we met Jake, and we hired another individual between Jake, who he is not military, but his wife is National Guard. So even then, it just kept spiraling. Everyone has a tie to that. So meeting Jake, and he expressed interest, but like, well, he obviously understands the culture. He served, and actually we just hired our sixth employee last week. I kind of forgot about him, but he'll be our first break in kind of, as far as I understand, he hasn't served and there's no connection with the military. So, but with Jake, it just was, he understood that culture, what we're going to go for. I knew he did years of contracting as well. And I know this might sound silly and people are going to make fun of it, but Jake will back me up on this. But I know he could be professional in a stressful situation. And I know it might not seem it, but customer service is very stressful some days. Some days and you are dealing with people at their worst sometimes, and they're complaining over very trivial things, and that really weighs on you, and it gets hard. And it's easy for people to blow up in that. Customer service is actually a very hard role I have a lot more respect for it after doing it for years. So I knew that stuck out, that knowing his background, he'd be able to at least compartmentalize that stress and still be professional. And then he can vent at the end of the day, and we wouldn't have situations where he blew up at a customer and now we're in like damage control. So that was a big thing in Jake's case. Why? Because we knew hiring him, we were going to throw him into the fire because we needed help on the customer service end really bad. So he was just going to have to jump in and start talking to people right away and figuring it out. And just kind of what I touched on before, professionalism, talking to people and having confidence is huge. And then Jake also still takes trash out, cleans bathrooms like we all do. He's not above any task. So just meeting him and talking to him and kind of knowing that military background, we don't know for sure, but it was a good guess that he wasn't going to be above any kind of task, which I think is something that, we can go into that, but that's something I think vets need. Some vets, I've watched some vets, not in this job, but in previous employment for the Forest Service, they struggled with. So.
Yeah, so that's a great transition, and it kind of leads me to my next question. And again, you don't have to, it's all been positive so far, and you don't have to say bad things about Jake, but maybe in your previous employment or people that you've interviewed and maybe didn't get the role, what are some weaknesses veterans have that maybe landing a job at, that either has turned you off and been like, this is not the guy or girl, or like, it's just a barrier because they don't have a certain skill either in the outdoor industry or in knowledge in the outdoor industry or in manufacturing, right? Like you guys still have to make a product. So like, what are some weaknesses a veteran may have in landing a job at a smaller company?
I guess there's 2 points I definitely want to hit here, Ryan, because you brought it up, and I'm gonna have to look at my note just so I don't skip it. But it's hard to tell veterans what they should really put on their resume to get the job. But I will say one thing, and not with this job, because Jake has been awesome. He really has. I give him shit all the time, but he really worked out. But when I worked for the Forest Service, I definitely saw a lot of veterans coming in, especially on the fire crews. And, most of them were great, but definitely one thing, I definitely watched some vets who not so much, like maybe they were a staff NCO or they were an officer, and now they are in a completely different world at the bottom of the totem pole. And they didn't, it was like a hard mental game for them to now take orders from someone way younger, or, that in their mind, they've done so much in their military career, but in reality that doesn't always transfer over with, as far as people do respect you, but you need to understand you're in a completely different role and environment now. And unfortunately, those individuals that really struggled with that and tried to throw their weight of their military background around and kind of use that above people, it put a bad taste in civilians' mouths, and that hurt veterans getting hired in the future. So I guess that's one thing to tell to everyone. You are now linked to a group. No matter what you do in your life, you are a vet. And if you don't act accordingly, it's just going to stain the name of veterans and make it harder for other vets to get hired, So I guess, be proud of what you've done in the past, everything. I'm not saying that, but just that's one thing I've watched a few. And it's funny, the vets who walked into like those fire crews and were just very humble, worked hard, they skyrocketed with leadership positions and moved forward. But the ones who really didn't like to be at the bottom of the totem pole again and struggle with that, they definitely got labeled, So I'd say that is something you could do for every other veteran, is just work hard and be humble about it and understand if you're going into something new. And I totally can't remember my other point there, what I wanted to make. So, I don't know. Sorry, Ryan. I should have wrote it down, but.
All good. So not specifically about go ahead.
Sorry, back to me. I apologize. Big thing to better that vets can do to better themselves though, is be involved too in the culture. That's one thing. Like, with it being such a small industry, you need to be very dedicated and show, like, if especially if we're talking hunting and fishing here, that you really live that lifestyle. That's what you care about, because we definitely weigh that someone's going to be great at this job. And let's just say it would be HR. Okay, let's, because we used that example before. They might have a great HR resume, but if they don't even have a clue about this outdoor lifestyle or anything, that's a negative, because we'll just run into issues there with a small team. They're going to have to pitch in on things and not having someone. So I'd say definitely show that if you are going for outdoor industry, like, try to be involved. And a good way to do that on a resume is show you're a member of outdoor organizations, like, be a member of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, BHA, be involved with Armed Forces Initiative, like that kind of stuff. If you put that on a resume, it helps kind of show, like, this person's life revolves around the outdoor community or outdoor heritage, and that goes a long way. And that's something, it might not be what you're looking for, but I think it's a good tip for that. So
No, so that's a good point. So just so I understand though, so even if someone really wants a job in small business, manufacturing, maybe go into a large business, any tie to the outdoor industry can be a plus, whether it's volunteer work or membership in one of the nonprofits, or, any way that they can.
yeah.
So do you see that, feel that in the outdoor industry, that the resume has obviously the hard skills of being in business, of manufacturing or HR, as well as the soft skills, or kind of the soft part of the resume about,
Yeah.
having credibility within the hunting and fishing community?
It is. I know. This being as a small industry, and when they fly jobs, there's a lot of people applying, and I'm not saying every single position, but it is nice, especially in the small team environment, to know you look at two people and say they're equal in skill set. At least it looks like that on their resume. And one person is, a vet, they're going to have teamwork, everything, and they're also kind of active in that outdoor space, or they seem to be really involved in, dedicated to it. I mean, us personally, we would choose that person, and I'm sure a lot of other businesses, after knowing the outdoor industry and having a lot of friends in different companies, you always want to kind of surround yourself with people that are also very into the same passion, because it's just going to help the company grow, versus people that don't have a clue, what's this company's, mindset is about. So.
Did you want to add anything, Jake? Did you have a comment on that, or?
No, not initially.
Okay, no, I just saw you come off mute for a second. So, yeah, so Rick, kind of with that, you've mentioned, the small community, the outdoor industry, the hook and bullet kind of industry, and you guys both mentioned, so, networking. So, because networking is a word, especially as people that have gone through SFL TAP or gone through kind of the military transition, especially coming off an active duty type role where, your day-to-day Army or Navy, Air Force or whatever, and then transitioning, you hear networking a lot, but I remember going through it myself, like, it's kind of hard to understand what that really means. So if you guys could each, because it's going to be different too with industry, right? Like, networking into Google or Ford or 3M is going to be different than networking in kind of the hunting and fishing community. Could you both talk on that a little bit from your perspectives, like, for the people that are listening that want to break into it, like, no kidding, how to do that, how to be involved, how to meet people, like, what does that look like without it feeling kind of icky and transactional?
Mm-hmm. Jake, do you have anything? Or because I have something, but I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I was just going to go back to what I had said initially. It can be hard to find a starting point when you're trying to network within the outdoor industry. I personally started with, like I had mentioned, going to trade shows and kind of getting to know the people that were in the outdoor industry, because as Rick had mentioned, it's a very small community. And, or if I was interested in a job, or I was interested in a company that maybe didn't have a job posting, I would maybe reach out to individuals at that company and just inquire about future opportunities with the company. And I know that's more in line with looking for a job as opposed to networking, but that was kind of how I personally got started, getting to know people within the industry. And then of course that led to me meeting Rick, which led to me getting this job. So Rick will have more on that note because he's been in the outdoor longer than I have.
I like what Jake said about, because we have people reach out all the time, just professionally. And, most times we don't have a position open at that time, but, if someone reaches out in a professional manner, we try to catalog and kind of keep their name set aside. And then if they do apply in the future, it just double increases that chance. I definitely know a bunch of people that now work in the outdoor industry, that got hired by simply starting to go to outdoor banquets, become involved with one of the outdoor organizations. So like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, they became an important volunteer on a local basis. They kind of proved themselves. Maybe they organized a pint night or helped to organize a banquet or something like that. And then that someone higher up in that organization knows someone working at this. And it's just, you start building that friendships. It's all about just knowing people and proving yourself. But I know, for instance, this person is not a vet, but about a year and a half ago, a young woman got a hold of me on Instagram and just said, I want to work in the outdoor space. Give me advice. And I said, start networking, go to BHA, pint nights, go to chapter banquets for Mule Deer Foundation, whatever, anything you're into, start going there, just meet people. And eventually something will take. Well, she ended up doing that. She went to a bunch of events, just started talking, being super friendly, and got a tip from someone inside Meat Eater that a position was going to open soon. She reached out, showed interest before it. And, with all that kind of proactive, work, her name went to the top of the pile of that job interview, and she got selected, and now she works for Meat Eater. So, that's what I mean by networking, is just look at your position, where you're at, and then say, I got a shotgun to every single job, reach out to people on LinkedIn, everything like Jake said, and then just start getting involved however you can to make friends, because that kind of word of mouth, people talking, will go a long way, especially if you start proving yourself and people will vouch for you and say, this guy's a good dude, or this gal's awesome, she'll work hard. That carries a lot of weight. So
I'll kind of flip that question for both of you again. So as someone that's kind of maybe sitting in this audience, are going to listen to the recording and thinking about where they, they like to hunt and fish, trying to figure out maybe where they fit into, do I want to work at a small company, a bigger company? Do I want to be, work in the outfitting industry? Each company, I've been around a few myself, have their different kind of culture and personality, especially when you start looking at hunting different from fishing or angling, or even within the hunting kind of sphere. The companies do have their different culture, whether it's East or West or wherever. What advice would you give someone to evaluate a company, to think about, is FHF the right company for me? Is First Light the right company for me? Is Meat Eater the right company for me? What advice would you give to someone? And then maybe for you, Jake, to follow up, how did you evaluate companies and decide, these are the ones I'm going to target because I think they're the right fit for me, and then eventually decide on FHF?
Rick, if you're cool, I'll take this one first.
Yeah, go ahead, because you definitely can speak to this better.
The first thing I noticed, Ryan, and for all you vets out there, I noticed this before I even started applying in the outdoor industry, is you don't get into the outdoor industry thinking that you're just going to be hunting. Because I think that's a mistake that a lot of non-veterans and veterans make when they're looking for jobs here, is they think they're going to be out with Steve Ranella or Randy Newberg or whoever, all day, every day. And that's not what you're going to be doing in this industry. Having said that, on a day-to-day basis, I'm talking to guys about their Alaska Doll sheep hunts or their Midwest whitetail hunts. And, guys will come into the shop and they want to talk about caribou, or they want to talk about what have you. And that's fantastic. I love that part of the job. But first and foremost, when you look at these companies, just look at them with the idea that you won't actually be out hunting all day. Because that is a common theme that we see. And maybe I had it initially too, but that would be probably first and foremost that I would say. And then from there, you can kind of evaluate a company by coming in and getting to know the employees that work there. Carl, the new guy we have actually starting tomorrow, he had learned everything that he possibly could about our company before he even did his interview. And he has come in here a couple of times since, like during our interview process, and we got to know him and he got to know us. And he really showed passion for wanting to work here, which I think was pretty instrumental in him getting the job.
No, I think that's pretty good advice. And Rick, I'll toss this over to you in a second, but I think that's good. Even outside the hunting and fishing industry, I mean, good advice for anyone transitioning is learn about the company you're going to interview in, right? Like nothing is worse than someone that comes in and be like, look, I just like to hunt and fish. I hear you guys are part of it. Like, and don't know your product line, don't know the background, don't know what you're about. So no, I think that's pretty good advice, overall. Rick, what about you? I mean, what would advice to, I mean, maybe not for you personally, because I mean, like, you've been where you're at and then worked at the Forest Service before, but, knowing the personalities of different companies in the outdoor industry and knowing, all these different, you go to a trade show and they're all there, what advice would you give someone to kind of, pick which one's right for them?
Yeah. So, and I'm just speaking off of, cause I never really vetted companies like this or anything, but from knowing the industry and just knowing our company, you're going to thrive in an environment where you're surrounded by a lot of like-minded individuals, and definitely you're going to have to through life work with people that are very think differently than you or sit differently on the side of the issues. But I guess tips would be probably go through their social medias, go through how they, are they a company, especially from a veteran's perspective, are they a company that has a social media post on Veterans Day, or do they not have anything? Or do they, if you can tell, call in, see if you can talk to their HR, see, what, or try to talk to someone on the inside and see like how many vets do they have inside this company? Is it what's the culture like inside of it? Because you definitely don't want to work hard, get an outdoor industry job, and then work for a company where the culture is not what you were expecting, you're miserable there or something, because then you're definitely going to get a bad taste in your mouth and you're going to jump ship. So, even though it's a hard thing to break into is this industry, but I definitely say do your research, look through social media, reach out to people, see what they, and honestly, like I said, if you're around the outdoor events enough, you'll probably bump into someone who works for an outdoor company, and you can just ask them like, do they like it or not? And most people will tell you like, it's great, love the culture, or it's a 9-to-5 job, So that's just the best tips I can give for that.
And to piggyback off that real quick, Ryan, if that's all right.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you do go into these companies, if you go into these companies and you get to know the people that are working there, just keep it in the back of your head that you will become the people that you hang around. And in this case with FHF, like coming in here, meeting Paul and Phil and Rick, I was like, I'm okay with becoming these people, whereas other companies I'd seen in the past that maybe I'd reached out to and talked to or went in and met the employees, I did not get that warm and fuzzy. I was like, I do not want to become these people, so, and nothing against other companies. That's my own personal kind of feel for it.
No, I think that's a great analogy, right? So it's maybe, especially in a smaller business, less about like, I just have a passion for bino harnesses than like, this is a group of people that I enjoy working with, whether we're building bino harnesses or belt loops or whatever the product is, right? Like, I think that's a good point is, especially in a small business, maybe more about the people and the culture and who you're going to spend, 50 hours a week with than necessarily like, I love Kudura, bino harness, and Velcro.
Yeah, no, that's 100%.
So with that, we've just got a few minutes left and open it up to questions here in a second. But, we talked a little bit about some of kind of where you fit in, your company, FHF, and where you guys fit in the outdoor space. You mentioned kind of opening up, Rick, that, the bino harness is really the foundation of the business. And for the longest time, that was really the lifeblood of the business as Paul kind of kept it going before he was able to retire. So, how have you guys expanded that from a product line? What are you guys working on now that's kind of maybe people don't know about or something you're excited about coming out, recently or I mean, you probably don't want to give away anything not out yet, but
Yeah.
what are you excited about? How do you expand beyond bino harnesses?
Yeah, so we definitely, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but we are all US made and we will stay all US made. So that adds a level of complexity because I'm sure it's not lost on anyone, but making anything in the United States is extremely expensive. So we don't have the profit margins that some of our competitors do. So with that, we always have to be super strategic about, we can make something. We always have to try to be a lot better in our mind, because if someone's going to justify to pay US made prices, we need to try to give them the best quality and new innovation. So, and we've been growing as a company the last few years. So we have a lot of exciting stuff coming. I will tell everyone on here, 2023 is going to be a super exciting year for us. We're all very excited. New additions to our foundational lines and increasing that modularity to a whole new level for our customer base. But for the rest of this year, we really concentrated on rifle accessories. We launched our rifle sling and packs attachment kit earlier this year, our tack mountain rifle rest, and an ammo sleeve for our harness. But we are going to launch later in August. We're going to have like an organizational kind of launch. We're going to have some more general purpose accessory pouches coming to kind of build out that kit. But then in October, we are going to have rifle cases launching that are, we're going to have 3 different size rifle cases, and they're going to be able to be mounted in your vehicle horizontally or vertical. They're not waterproof because they are a sewn product. They're not welded seams, but they are highly water resistant, waterproof zipper and material, marine grade foam. So they'll float, and they're sized to go in your hard case or most hard cases on the market. So if you're someone flying to Alaska or something, you need a hard case for that airline travel, and then you can pull your soft case out. But there's a lot of modularity in that. I actually use it as a scabbard too on horses. So you can even rig it to saddles. And then suppressor covers, we're going to have those launching. And I don't think we've told anyone that. So anyone on this call kind of knows that now before a lot of our people. But we'll have some other rifle accessories for the rest of this year. We're going to break more into some tactical products, which, like I said before, it's always been tough for us because there's a lot of tactical products out there in the space, and a lot of them are manufactured overseas. So it's hard to, work against those price points there. But we are going to expand our tactical line next year. And like I said, we're going to have some big changes to our core products, which is really exciting, just offering more stuff for people. So that's kind of a little insight to what we're working on. And we're really going to have a lot of products coming out in the next couple of years, because there's only 5 or 6 of us now, so we're getting more bandwidth to get stuff done.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. It's been fun to watch you guys grow from, like you said, the traditional bino harness and bino pack to adding the accessories and just expanding to the chest rig, and then all the modularity around the chest rig, and then the products you guys came out with is even just the rifle rest that attaches to a trekking pole or something like that, or like the leg on a a tripod or something. Man, some of that stuff's awesome. The rifle sling. So anyone not familiar, again, I'll totally encourage them to go check out the catalog and check out online what you guys offer, because FHF a huge supporter of us. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes in the end, kind of for closing comments or anything last minute advice you want. So I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. And then Kyle, is there any kind of questions in the chat room? And if not, kind of allow people to come off mute and maybe ask a live question or two.
Yeah, we've got one out here. So it's companies open to short internships from Anthony, a week or 2 on leave, come out, learn new skills, and retire. If I can interject, Rick and Jake, also don't forget, I did an internship as my transition with Trout Unlimited. So BHA, Trout Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, those other organizations Rick mentioned, they're also open in the space. Now I'll turn it over to Rick and Jake. I just don't want to get purely in the sales space.
So Kyle, I have a quick question for you real quick. Somebody had mentioned through another avenue recently that, when I got out of the military in 2009, I went through TAPS, which from my understanding has been shown to not be very effective helping vets transition out. Is there a new platform, or has there been a new platform for some time to help vets transition out, like an internship? Would you mind
so there's
talking to that?
2 parts to that. There's the which I think is what Anthony was asking, and I'll let him come off mute here in a second and make sure we're answering his question, is if I just got 2 weeks of leave, can I take 2 weeks off and come hang out and kind of learn the business a little bit? That's the very informal, not official, like I've got 2 weeks of leave or whatever. To answer your question, Jake, though, there is a DoD program called Skill Bridge, and you apply through your chain of command. And what it allows you to do is essentially extend your time in the service. It's mostly for active duty guys, I think, but extend your time in the service 90 to 180 days. You actually stay on active duty for those last 90 to 180 days, getting your military pay, but you're on a TDY status working at a company. So for the company, they get 90 to 180 days of, intern, tryout, no obligation to hire, free labor. The service members still getting their active duty pay and permissive TDY and maybe building the resume a little bit. So there is a more formal program.
Thanks for breaking that down, Ryan.
Yeah, Garrett, you or Anthony, you want to kind of clarify your question there?
Yeah, so I mean, I still have 5, 6, 7 years till I'm out. So obviously being an East Coast guy, everyone's dream is to go west, and what's better than to go west for a week or two, burn some leave, and and kind of hang out with like-minded people that are doing the same things to build that network, to learn some new skills, to show a little bit of that worth before you get to that part where 5, 6 years down the road, you can make that text or call and stay in touch and say, hey, like, I'm about to transition. Like, are you guys got any openings, or, or are they putting you in another direction? Like, if the community is so small, it's like the military too, where you hear, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah's moving here. His house is for sale. It's the same way. You link up those buddies to make things happen. So I imagine it's probably the same way in this network for that as well.
Yeah, I have something to add to that. So it's a really good question, especially with the east like to west thing. One thing to know, I also before the Forest Service, I used to work for Pheasants Forever as an employee, and definitely had watched volunteers that were really influential in in East Coast state just start networking, and eventually they jumped into that organization, and then eventually jumped into the outdoor industry working for a company. So, you're not, just because you're in the East Coast doesn't mean you put you in a bad position. There's always something local you could start getting involved with that, just to kind of build that. And then on top of that, definitely reach out to companies and ask for internships. We actually have an intern here. It's our first one. I will tell you, I did internships years ago. I can't believe how the legality around internships has changed. So, even if someone coming in and kind of shadowing in the office, the federal government looks at that as like slavery, which is, they've changed those laws. So that'd be something, it would be the HR per company would have to cost benefit or look at that. But I think it's a great idea to reach out to companies and just ask, do they have an internship? Could this ever be a possibility? And put it out there. That's a really awesome idea. So.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rick. And I got the chat up now. So Greg, that's a great point. Greg, Garrett asked, are there any companies we know of? And I'd have to think about it. A lot of the nonprofits actually are tied to Skill Bridge. I'd have to think about the actual kind of more industry type companies. But to Greg's point, it is not hard to build your own Skill Bridge internship. Now, I'll also say, when you look at a 5 or 6 person company, like that's a huge burden to them, right? Because they don't have that HR infrastructure and everything else. So you might be more successful with a national nonprofit, like a BHA or Rocky Mountain Elk or Pheasants Forever, because they are huge. They do have local chapters. They've got some of that infrastructure, or even a bigger company in the manufacturing industry, a First Light or a Vortex or something like that. That might be a little bit bigger.
So real quick, Ryan, because mine wasn't independent. It takes about 6 pieces of paper to get an independent internship done. It's really not intensive. And I have a couple contacts. If somebody wants to do one, I can help them get lined up.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kyle. And I guess my point was like, if a company doesn't have it, like you want to go do an internship at First Light, like you might be a Skill Bridge internship. You might be the one having to help walk your own paperwork through and walk them through that process, as opposed to like them just being like, yes, here it is. We've got an internship. Come join us. You might have to kind of be able to walk them through that process and explain it a little bit. But no, it's a great, and we're starting to see more of that specifically in the nonprofit world.
And then Hunter had the question, and I kind of know this one, but I'm going to let it go. Does working in the industry leave time to hunt? I would imagine preseason and during season is extremely busy.
Jake and I will both answer this, but I'd say kind of what Jake said. I'll piggyback off that. That is one, honestly, it's a negative to the season is our busy season is hunting season, especially sales. At least our thing is we are selling a product to hunters. Don't get me wrong. We still work very hard to help each other get out. Like I will help cover on Jake's position. He will help when I'm gone, because we all are diehard outdoorsmen. I mean, hunting is the reason we all got here. But you do give up time in the outdoor industry. And I definitely know, depending on your role, your job position, I know people who significantly hunt less now that they have it, because it's, you know, the success of the team, that's more important to them than getting out right now. So yeah, then Jake can add to it too.
Yeah, no, Rick's 100% correct on all that, you know, and I've only been with FHF Gear for one fall. I've been here for a year, but just one fall. And, you know, we do a good job, like Rick said, of helping each other get out. And on the other side of that, we're a pretty small team too. So, you know, we can kind of work around each other as we need to. So, and there are opportunities at times to maybe make a good excuse to go on a hunt if we're generating content for FHF Gear. You know, that's kind of some of the perks of what we do here. You know, if we're going out to have fun hunting, but as long as we're getting, you know, marketing content for our products, sometimes that can be a benefit. But for the most part, we don't get to hunt as much as we would like.
All right. Anthony asked, pay scale in the outdoor industry.
It's definitely, it very much depends on exactly what, you know, role you're having in the outdoor industry. If you're very specialized, and just, I'm going to speak to our side and knowing other manufacturing companies, if you have a big skill set as far as a designer, and, you know, clothing or something like that, you can have a good pay scale, but that does need a lot of technical background and years of working in that. But generally pay scales are pretty good. I'd say overall, I mean, I have a background in addition to my mill background in natural resources, and I'm here right now. So if that helps you, I mean, and I love my natural resource stuff. I miss it a lot, but it's you know, the pay scales on natural resource jobs are pretty low. So it's tough.
Does it like speak to where like the location is as well? Like obviously you guys being up there, it's gonna, the cost of living is more to certain areas, you know, versus if you were like in, you know, BFE somewhere and it costs like nothing to live. So
Can you live in Bozeman?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not work. Well, go ahead.
Oh, I will say that is, like I said, that's very much, yeah, the cost of living comes into it. But I will say that is something we're dealing with now. Like this place is getting insane. So we're feeling the pinch from that. So I don't think any industry is, you know, immune to that with the way our country is right now. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, that does play into effect for sure.
Yeah, Anthony, your head.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I was just going to say, Anthony, your head's in the right place, though, thinking about kind of the cost of living in certain places, because there's actually been quite a few people that have wanted jobs in the outdoor industry here in Bozeman. It's kind of the mecca for the outdoor industry, but the cost of living here is substantially more than most other places. And that's actually a major deterrent. You know, when you look at the average salary within the outdoor industry, I was already here in Bozeman, which helped big time. But if you have to move to a location like Bozeman, you know, or Haley, Idaho, or what have you, that can be a huge issue. You know, and even if you have the ability to afford a home in these places, it's more, there's just no homes available. So you might be renting for a while.
I've got one final question for Rick and Jake. What time you guys all hiking out tomorrow morning?
Oh, man. Jake, better answer this one.
I just want to make sure I beat you.
We don't have a plan yet, Kyle. We need to group up and figure that out. So
Might need a few more old fashions before I decide on that.
Jake has a new employee starting tomorrow under him, so he's his mind's been a little on.
Way to break him in. Take him for a nice walk in the morning.
Yeah, maybe we'll take him with us.
Yeah, we should. We did joke about
Yeah.
hating him. So maybe we
We'll
can
go
do-
knock on his door at 12:01.
Well, thanks to Rick and Jake, FHF has given us a t-shirt hat combo for a giveaway for, randomly drawn names. So Scott Ruther and Greg Alves, you are 2 winners. If you want to send me an email, I just posted my email in chat. If you just want to send me an email with your contact information there and your mailing address, I'll get that over to Rick and Jake, and we'll get you guys each out a hat t-shirt combo from FHF. So with that, Rick and Jake, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you guys. Hopefully everyone took value out of this, learned a little bit something. Guys that have been to, this is our 3rd career series, our 3rd session in the career series. So we've heard a little bit about how to use some of your benefits. We've heard a little bit about, the outfitting and guiding industry this week. Appreciate both you guys adding to the conversation around, small business and manufacturing. Next week, if everyone wants to join, we've got Vortex coming on board to talk about what it's like to work maybe at a little bit larger company that has a little bit more infrastructure behind them. And so thank you guys both so much. I'll pause here, let Rick and Jake have any closing comments, and then see if Trevor has anything to add to close us out. Rick and Jake, anything?
Yeah, I'll throw out my closing comments. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully we gave, some good info and insight. If anyone has other questions, you can always reach out to us and ask. Don't give up, though. If you truly want to be in the outdoor industry, there's a lot of different avenues to do it. Just don't give up. And yeah, and good luck to everyone. That's all my closing thoughts are.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I want to thank you guys all for your time. Don't forget that you have a wide variety of skills to bring to the outdoor community, either from your tactical background or your hunting background, or both. And you've proved yourself previously by serving, but don't rest on that. Don't forget that you have to continue to prove yourself. So that's really all I have for you guys. And again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks again, Jake and Rick, both you guys. Trevor, any comments, or Kyle, anything else you want to close with?
I've got nothing. Thanks everybody for coming. Hopefully y'all tune in next week and talk to Vortex a little bit.
And Jake and
thanks
Rick, you
again,
hear this?
Rick and Jake.
Whoop, sorry. If anybody's in the Bozeman area, hit me up. We've got a lot of recovery that's going to happen over the next few weeks. And I've got some people that are organizing stuff. So I don't know who's here from Bozeman area, but we'll try to get things better and back to right.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thanks, Rick and Jake. Appreciate it again. We'll catch up with you guys later. Appreciate your time. I'll get you those addresses.
Thank you.